everyone is all right. This has been a productive day. I think I've spent a lot of it reading through some of the news stuff to try to figure out what I wanted to do. This story will be relatively quick, and I want to give a shout out to Ben Norton for finding this story. Yesterday, there was a military helicopter crash in Venezuela, and CNN, of course, being Johnny on the spot, comes out with an article. Tell me if you can spot what's wrong with this article. Military helicopter crashes in Venezuela, killing 7 amid protests. So let's get right here. In his tweet, Maduro said the 7 who died were right here. In his tweet, Maduro said the 7 who died were officers from the Fuerza Armada Nacional Bolivariana, or the National Bolivarian Armed Forces, I should have just said that, known by its Spanish initials FANB. According to the Ministry of Defense, authorities are currently investigating the deadly crash. It comes as pressure is mounting on Maduro to step down following elections in January, which voters chose opposition leader Juan Guaido over him for president. What? What? Excuse me? It comes as pressure is mounting on Maduro to step down following elections in January, in which voters chose opposition leader Juan Guaido over him for president. How can you not know that? How can you... What? Juan Guaido didn't get elected to a pie shop. But it was at the very least not president. 85% of the population did not know who he was. So how did he get elected to be president? Do you know why Juan Guaido is in the position he's in? Because of pressure from the United States. The United States has been working with Colombia, in addition to Brazil, to put pressure on the Ecuadorian government, not to mention the sanctions that it's been using to squeeze the government with hopes that it would create internal turmoil and chaos, not to mention to try to peel away elements of the military in order to get to Guaido, the opposition leader. Now, part of this has to do with the United States wanting the resources of Venezuela. Venezuela is rich in oil, not to mention minerals, and it wants their hands on it. Bolton has said as much, that the companies wants to get their hands on it. A hostile force has prevented that country from restructuring its financial affairs. Now, as you know, this argument hasn't mentioned Maduro. At least I don't think I've mentioned Maduro, because it has nothing to do with Maduro. It has everything to do with this country trying to topple and change the government of another country, either by hook or by crook, meaning either through the sanctions themselves, creating enough internal turmoil for that country to essentially fall apart, and in some cases threatening the country to try to entice military leaders with cash or with positioning to peel away from Maduro. That's what's taking place. Juan Guaido didn't get elected anywhere. And to make this point at home, right here, doesn't that mean making it up? Anti-Maduro coalition grew from secret talks. He was a patsy. He was a patsy. If this had happened in this country, this guy would have been locked up for treason. That's what we're talking about. So, when CNN writes the story, it comes as pressure is mounting on Maduro. Juan Guaido wasn't elected. He wasn't elected. He was a patsy. CNN gets this massively wrong. Massively wrong. Now, this CNN was alerted to this, and fair enough, CNN goes back and it updates the article. Pressure is mounting on Maduro to step down. Opposition leader Juan Guaido declared himself, that's better, declared himself interim president and was backed by the United States and a dozen other patsy nations. Isn't that amazing? Can you imagine Nancy Pelosi saying, hey, there's a lot of people out there protesting, so I'm going to declare myself interim president of the United States. And then Russia turns around and says, you know what? Donald Trump, we no longer accept Donald Trump as president. We're going to go with Pelosi. And that's the only person we're going to do dealings with. Can't even conceive of such. It's so absurd. And that is, in fact, what's taking place in Venezuela. It's utterly absurd. Germany wouldn't even accept the ambassador for coming in because, under Germany's eyes, if there was any legitimacy to this at all, Guaido would have called an election already. Guaido is not calling an election, however. He is calling for an uprising. And he is begging the United States to use military force in addition to, up to using military force to put him in office. Where's the popular uprising? Why do you have to call for military force? Why do you have to use these other nations to get in office? If indeed you had this mass support that you claim that you have. I mean, come on. This is utter nonsense. What happens in Venezuela are the affairs of Venezuela. I don't want to have anything to do with it. The fact of the matter is, if Venezuela was any other nation, they would have just reorganized their financial affairs. The truth of it is, the United States did not allow them to. Maduro may be corrupt, but are you telling me that Trump wasn't, or is not, or that these other people in office in the United States aren't? How is that the standard by which we decide to remove somebody from office in an entirely different country? It's amazing how compliant media is with this stuff. Were they lying or were they corrupt? Meaning, are they lying or are they incompetent? Which one is it? I've been watching mainstream media legitimize Guaido, doing their best. And it's hard to get any honest assessment of what's taking place in Venezuela because Western media has been so off their goddamn mind on this, towing the government's line. I would say this, though. This is a massive error that even goes beyond the basic propaganda. Are they incompetent or are they part of trying to legitimize Guaido? Let's keep going for a moment. This is the last part I want to get to. The correction. I love the correction. An earlier version of this story incorrectly described how Juan Guaido came to be Venezuela's self-declared president. Not just incorrectly described. I kind of want you to be a little bit more clear. What do you mean incorrectly described? Are you saying he got elected? Can you tell me how wrong that is? All right, I'm not going to keep this one long. Shout out to Ben Norden for finding it. Look, my only issue with the story, everybody makes mistakes, so don't misunderstand me. The issue here is not the mistake in and of itself. The issue here is the direction of the mistake. It's kind of like the Trump stuff. When the media was on their mind trying to create some link between Trump and Russia, all of these negative stories came out, and many of which you found were to be completely wrong. But they were all wrong in one specific direction. The direction of Trump and Russia. Again, wrong. The U.S. media has taken a certain perspective of the Venezuelan, whatever the hell is taking place in Venezuela. And they're looking at this purely through the lens of a Washington consensus. Because regardless of how much they hate Trump on issues of war and foreign policy, they line up behind the U.S. government as if the guy who they thought was entirely incompetent on domestic policies becomes some kind of genius on foreign policy. Nevertheless, CNN gets it wrong. And that's the main thrust of this particular video. So I'm not going to keep this long. I'm going to end this here because I have a few other videos that I want to get to. But shout out to Ben Norden for finding this. Thanks all. If you enjoy the content, please consider supporting through PayPal or Patreon. I'll see you guys in probably 15 minutes.